Okay, this is a meeting of the Leominster School Committee. I call this meeting to order. It is Monday, December 18th, 2017. We are at Francis Drake School, and we have someone leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes.
Here he comes. We all stand and join Eric in a salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you. Very good job. Yes. Leominster School Committee Statement. The committee represents the needs of all Leominster public students, places their interest above all others, will exercise leadership, adhere to our protocols, and base our decision upon a reasoned assessment of all available information. We will advocate for each of our schools and support high-quality public education in the city of Leominster. At this time, I'd like to open up the open forum session of the meeting.
And as a point of order, before the
Yes.
open forum, so as a point of order, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to say that people who come up to the public forum should be addressing items on the agenda, and there should not be any degrading or disparaging comments about any personnel or staff. If anybody has any issues specific to employee issues, then they should be directing those issues directly to the superintendent or that person's direct supervisor. This is not appropriate to have a public forum to sort of bash or be negative about any employee of the department.
So noted. First speaker is Sarah Ramram. Sarah, there you are. Good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Sarah Ramram, and I live on Pine Street in Leominster, Massachusetts.
Check your microphone. I'm not sure. It's either up or it's on. Go ahead.
Yeah. At the last school committee meeting, I mentioned us coming back if no interest or action was taken towards our cause, and here we are, back again today. And I will again reiterate what my fellow stump members and I said last week. These are the things we will be expecting from the committee and LPS administration. A formal apology from Mr. Fratto for his unprofessional behavior.
I think at this point, if you have any concerns about his behavior or in a meeting, then you need to address that with the superintendent, who would be his direct superior. It's not a
but this
forum
was
for us to be
this
talking
was
about
kind
here.
of like the last minute option for us to make, since we have contacted and reached out to so many LPS administration personnel. So as a student, this is our last way to get our kind of own wishes out.
What the committee member is saying is if there's an issue with an employee, then it goes to the proper channels, which is the superintendent. And then if you're not satisfied with that response, then the superintendent reports to the school committee, and then that would be the proper channels.
Okay.
Is that
correct?
Comfortable?
Yeah. Can I finish what I was reading then?
Not if it's degrading or negative towards a public school employee. If you have an issue, then you would be able to deal with it with his superior.
I don't think it's degrading. I'm just telling the truth. I mean, the last part of it really isn't. It's just stating something, and yeah. Stump has recently submitted to the RAO via registered mail a request for an updated line item budget with both salaries and expenses organized by school, as well as any change orders or written modifications to the Tech Edge contract. We also requested copies of any email sent or received by the participants of the October 27th meeting referencing what had happened at the meeting. It is our sincere hope that this request is handled pursuant to the public records law. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Sarah.
I just had a question. If she needs to file for a public record, like you have to file
Right, you have to file a written
You
request.
can't just sit here and ask for it. You have to actually file.
No, I did file it. That's what I said. I'm sorry, I'm not close enough to the mic. My bad. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else like to address the school committee? Once again? Yes. Holly?
Holly Kosky. I just wanted to let you know, there was an editorial in the newspaper today, and it was talking about 23 versus 10 custodians, and I did find that get the documentation that Emerald Green is only being paid for 10 for the month of December, not the 23. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the committee? Now, close this portion of the meeting. We'll now move on to the communications from the superintendent or the superintendent's report.
There are no communications this evening, but I would just like to make a quick comment to our Leominster Public School community, students, families, and members for supporting all of ours, and this is quite a lengthy list this evening. Between holiday performances, concerts, the production of Peter Pan, outstanding, food drives, gift drives at each school, parent information has been supplying our families with needs, and most recently, Chartwell Food Services for hosting a special holiday meal and gifts for all our foster families. And this past Saturday, our Leominster Education Foundation and Chartwell's for sponsoring hosting the holiday brunch for our families in need. So I want to wish everyone a very happy holiday season, and we'll see you in the new year.
Superintendent, is it a full day on Friday?
It is.
Just to make sure that folks know that.
Yes. Sorry.
They know it. They just don't.
Unless it snows.
And we have nothing to do with that part.
Nothing.
We have no control over
No.
that. I did want to say, just on the follow-up in the communications, is that we had started this evaluation, working with the school department and the city on safety. We are in the final phase, which is a radio system now, a communication system for the schools, which now allows the schools to talk within the schools, schools to talk school to school, myself or the superintendent to speak directly in the event that there's an emergency. But that's not the only reason the system is set up. It's just basic communication between the staff at the various schools, and it's up and running, a few tweaks here and there. I think the final stages is just getting us connected, or you're
Yes.
connected and I'm not.
Connected now.
But that it went off very successfully.
Yes.
School department working with the city, all of our internal staff put the radio system together. We ordered the parts, put them together. We don't hire a consultant, and worked really well. And so we've completed the last of the public safety plan, which incorporated police, fire, emergency management, city, and school departments. So that, I think, will be a big help for everyone. Okay, we'll now move on. Any policy subcommittee, finance
Yes.
subcommittee?
We did meet as a policy subcommittee tonight, and we went over the C section in the handbook, and we just are tweaking just a couple of the policies, just changing a couple of words here and there. So next time, it'll be on our agenda for first reading, once the corrections are made.
Okay, I will jump back to Francis Drake School presentation. I know that's why everybody's here tonight. Whenever they do a presentation, this room fills up. So that's pretty impressive. So I think that's a tribute to the staff here, and so we will turn this meeting over to the staff at Francis Drake for a presentation.
Good evening, and thank you for letting us do your presence today. So today we have rather quick items, but I think they're very unique, and you will enjoy them. We will start in just a minute, so Eric, get ready, with a piano performance to just kind of set the tone for this time of year. And we'll follow that with an update for our youth adventure from our assistant principal, Mrs. Hess. We'll follow that with a very quick school improvement update and mostly in the hands of one of our third grade and also a member of our assessment team, Nate Arbor. And we'll close it with a very unique group of students, second graders, having for us a physics Christmas carol about gravity. So get ready for that. So we'll get it going. I'm going to help Eric over here get going, and we'll follow from there.
That's great. That's good.
Eric Mio, one of our fifth grade students. Awesome job, Eric. Thank you. Awesome, awesome job. Next up, as I mentioned before, we'll have Mrs. Hess with an update on our Youth Venture group.
Got to get the glasses on now. First and foremost, I want to give a warm welcome to Paula and your new position, so congratulations. Glad you're where you are. So just an update on our Youth Venture team. This is Francis Drake's third year with this procedure, and we've had some really great success in the past. Our first venture was to support the Cat Brody shelter, and I think we were able to bring in over 500 cans of cat food for them. Last year, we brought around more awareness to Earth Day. And this year, our hopes and dreams are to maybe be the first elementary school to create a sustainable project where we're going to work with a school in Puerto Rico. We have contacts. We're unable to reach them just yet, for obvious reasons, but we're looking forward to communication with them, fundraising for them, and then hopefully have communication via satellite, via online, maybe doing some writing with students. So we're looking forward to this. Lastly, I want to congratulate the students at Francis Drake. If you look behind me, there is a board that is almost green. Very small corner. There's a little purple square. This is our Caught Being Good dragon tickets. The children have been doing a fantastic job. We're pouring it on this week, of course. If they fill the board, it'll be, what's that? No pun intended. That's right. So they will earn a pajama day. So they're really hoping for that to happen before the holidays. If not, it'll be something to look forward to after we get back. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So now is the serious part, school improvement plan. And we are not gonna, and we'll put a couple of visuals there in a minute to guide you through it. And you know, we don't intend to give you a complete detail of the school improvement plan, as it will take us about 2 hours to do so. But we did wanted to highlight the outline of what is in store, what we're planning for the next couple of years in terms of the general view or what we're going after. Many of you might have heard, I'm sure have heard, the concept of metacognition, and obviously the everlasting concept of data analysis that is so important in our schools. That's something that we do on a daily basis to inform our instruction. And in this particular school improvement plan, we have added the concept of growth mindset. And again, all three very well-known concepts, but we are taking that to the grind and to make sure that in each one of those three, hand in hand, for the next 2 years, we'll be working hard at making that work. We've done some work already in the area of metacognition. The first part was simply to be sure that, well, we all agreed as to what it was, and that we all had a common understanding of what metacognition is. And in simple words, it's thinking about thinking, right? And the ability to basically self-monitor your own thinking and reasoning. That coupled with the data analysis, and again, each one of these three concepts fit right into our district improvement plan. So at this point, I'm going to let Mr. Arbor, who's one of our assessment team members, do a quick outline of each one of those three. I might interject here and there, but he is going to go ahead and take you through it.
I have no idea why that's purple, by the way. You guys hear me if I don't use a mic? Everyone good? You guys good if I don't use a mic? All right. It's the teacher in me. I'm just used to doing that.
So they can't hear you on TV is the problem. So you could take the mic with you.
I'll have to see. All right. So I'm Nathan Arbor. I'm a third grade LEAP teacher here at Francis Drake. And as Mr. Vera said, part of our school improvement plan, the big push of it is higher order thinking and metacognition. And not only asking what is the answer, but why is that the answer? You know, answering that because part of it. So currently we have an enrichment block and an intervention block. So students, there's a half hour each day where students who need the extra support are pulled out of the classroom. And so they might work on reading comprehension or fluency or what have you. But it also leaves some students in the classroom as well. So the students are getting support that need it, but those students that are still in the classroom, we feel we could use to promote the metacognition and higher order thinking strategies. And as an example of an activity, and this is something that we are developing, you know, so teachers can have something, sort of a curriculum to fall back on. And this is just one example. It's so important to get students just discussing, making observations, making inferences. And I did this with my students last year. It's a forced perspective image. And so I showed it to them, and their first reaction was, wow, how's she doing that? She's standing on her head, and wow, that's crazy. And if you can see, if you make some observations, her hair, I know the image isn't the best, but her hair is actually not falling down. It looks like she's on her hands, but her hair is not falling down, it's going up. And you can see her sweatshirt's the same thing. So I'm asking these kids to make observations, asking my students to make these observations, and then make an inference instead of accepting what they see within the first 5 seconds. So we have some pretty good conversations about these sorts of images.
So can you explain that when they first went on the moon and the flag wasn't flying?
I do not have that
Do you
answer.
have that
Sorry,
answer?
no,
Exactly,
no.
because I've been waiting for that answer.
Maybe I should show that to the kids and
Maybe
they could
the
explain it
answer.
for us. I do not know. So we have some pretty interesting discussions over images like this, and it just gets them thinking kind of, And it's cliche to say this, thinking outside the box, to think outside the box. And part of our objective is to actually track, this is what we're working on now, is to get a method to track track the effectiveness of that enrichment block as well. So we're working on criteria, exactly what that's going to look like to see if our activities are working, or if we need to do something else. So it's pretty fascinating stuff to look into. And our objective, number 3, speaks more to the social and emotional learning through the school day, and I think this is really about teaching the whole student. I mean, obviously academics are important, and the higher order thinking, but I think if the better they know themselves, the better they'll learn, the more they'll learn. And so we want them to monitor their actions and their peers both in and out of the classroom. So as Mr. Vera said, it's that metacognition. They're always thinking about what they're doing, about what they're thinking, and their interactions. And the growth mindset, I think that's been emphasized more this year. And this is just a quick definition of the growth mindset. It's just a perception of yourself. We look at the students as, what is their perception of themselves as learners? Are they confident? Do they think they can take on a challenge? And if they have a setback, can they bounce back from that? Or do they come into the classroom right away and say, you know what, I just can't do it, or within 10 seconds they just say, I can't do it, which a lot of us run into. So we're trying to get them into a growth mindset so they see struggle as an opportunity to learn. They're willing to try new ways of thinking, even if it's not their suggestion, and they're willing to give it a second shot. And I think this third one, and I've found in the classroom, using positive language. Instead of saying, I don't get it, which we hear a lot in the classroom, I don't get it. Instead of that, I have my students, I ask them to say, I need to think about this a little bit differently, or can you help me think about this differently? Just hearing that positive language really can help change their mindset, from a negative one to a growth mindset. So I think the school improvement plan as a whole, I mean, we are promoting higher order thinking, but we're also teaching, the whole student as well, and promoting their emotional and social needs as well. So that, in a nutshell, is our current school improvement plan. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Believe me, there's a lot more to it. That was just a very, very general outline of what we'll be working on in the next couple of years. So, unless there are any questions regarding what we've done so far, we wanted to treat you at the end of our little presentation with a group of second graders, I believe 18 of them. So we're going to invite them to come up under the guidance of their teachers and be ready for a treat. Mr. Sessi is passing around the performance, the lyrics to the performance they're about to have. Yeah, there you go. Let's join.
Let me shut my microphone.
Oh my. Oh my. Thank you, Wendy. This is so cute.
Thank you very much. That was absolutely fantastic. Hopefully we learned a couple of things about gravity just by following along on those lyrics. Thank you. You may come down. And thank you to the parents. Thank you so much. This was a very short notice. Thank you also to our teachers who coordinated them to have this ready for us today, and obviously made the time tonight to come and join us for this number. I appreciate it.
That was fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good job, everybody.
Good job, good job. How you doing?
Good. How about you? Hold on 1 second. Just wait for that.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. I'm a big supporter when we start talking about growth mindset and metacognition, because the big piece behind that, if you know anything else, it's the why. That you always ask yourself, why am I doing this? Why is this happening? So it's perfect for my entry plan. So I just want to say good evening and thank you for allowing this time to communicate with full transparency. In order to soundly lead Leominster Public Schools, my introduction into the position of interim superintendent and purpose in creating a short entry plan was to help me learn the intricate details about our current picture of our school system and the community's relationships towards supporting students. Is that you, Chris? It's working.
They're just trying to fix the coloration
Okay.
problem.
Even though I'm a longtime member of this community, I felt it was important that I deeply understand the norms, values, and mostly the hopes within Leominster. Over the past 30 days, much of my time has been spent gathering information via schools, classroom visits, meetings within and outside of my office with educational and community resource staff, and multiple phone calls and email communications to outstanding members like MASS, MASC, FLAC, etc. I also gathered data regarding our current enrollment, class sizes, Ls, and specialized programming. A sampling of questions asked are as follows. And please understand that discussions often went in unexpected directions due to the passionate views of the interviewees. Questions that I asked: how do you feel about Leominster Public Schools? How informed do you feel you are in relation to the school department's issues, budget, enrollment, academics, athletics, diversity? What's your hope for Leominster Public Schools? What are the key issues that you believe are current in Leominster Public Schools? Do you believe we are providing appropriate services and programs to all our students? How involved are you in Leominster Public Schools? How do you view the role of the superintendent in supporting you and your family? What advice would you give me in the role of interim superintendent? That was a loaded question. In an ever-changing society, what do you most want Leominster to hold on to as a source of value? When I finished conducting my interviews, I analyzed the responses and denoted trends to frame my thoughts as I prepared my short-term and a few lofty long goals and statements. First and foremost, the strongest positive which grounds my efforts is Leominster is a city that values education. This was evident throughout each and every conversation. Many interviews started off with, "I want you to know how much I love this city and being a part of it. I'm lucky to be here and to have what we have." Interviewees wanted me to know of their commitment, whatever it may be, on whatever level, to right the Leominster Public Schools' reputation of being potentially broken. The concerns that repeatedly surfaced were the following: curriculum. Overall, our curricular decisions are disjointed due to the fact that we have so many curricular needs and not enough expertise to clearly derive an aligned decision-making as often mandated by DESE. Assessment, whether it's report cards, local or state assessments, and technology platforms within these programs need to be continually managed, assessed, reviewed, revised. Perception and communication, for me, these seem to go together. There's a feeling that there's been a lack of transparency. All stakeholders projected a negative response towards knowing what was clearly happening within and towards Leominster Public Schools. Continually I heard, budget, budget, budget. Stakeholders that I spoke with didn't fully understand the process or where the school system now sat in terms of funding. Many asked for clarity and understanding. They were willing to take the time to listen. Safety and security, exclamation mark. Concerns regarding drills and protocols surfaced continually. Those I questioned expressed uncertainty when it came to school safety. Many also mentioned students' emotional safety in terms of dealing with any type of trauma and/or mental illness. Conditions in which to best support students seems uncertain. And then transportation. The cost of transporting students in the district is a troublesome funding problem. Currently down 2 buses, and the need for flexibility to support pickup and drop-off for students is often difficult. As for technology, as the need for increased usage of technology for instruction and assessment, our current infrastructure is antiquated and lacks the framework in which to appropriately use its platform. And cleanliness. I often heard, are our schools clean enough? Are our students getting sick from being unkept schools? Who's cleaning our buildings? Who's in our buildings? And then lastly, personnel. Who works where, and what is the true need within each and every building regarding staff? So next steps, my abbreviated plan depicts priority goals for June 2018, which I commit to immediately addressing. In order to achieve a high standard for our school district, it's important that we have a clear focus and that we employ the guiding principles in moving us forward. The guiding principles depict high academics, data-based decision-making, safe learning environments, and proper preparation necessary for success. Please recognize that underlying every decision is the following statement: is this in the best interest of our students? And I repeat, is this in the best interest of our students? So we move towards one district, one mission. Key areas for improvement, or goals, will structure our decisions. As you can see, there are 5 overarching themes: budget, curriculum, instruction and assessment, operations, and social emotional learning. Within your binder, you will find documents that I've included to drive decisions for FY19. First is the financial document, which paint a clear picture of where school resources are currently spent and at what percentage of the entire budget. Utilizing the subsequent funding documents, the following needs are apparent. Carefully hiring of staff and their salaries, as our budget shows that 76% of our funding is spent in this one domain. We need to be extremely mindful of enrollment needs, negotiating contracts, tracking substitute, expense lines, unemployment, and determining the impact of those claiming who should not be, and finally, the allocation of staff resources. As demonstrated within the packet, as a district, we must take daily snapshots of where monies are being spent and how. Compliance is a must, and currently we are in need of fulfilling positions that are mandated by law. Carefully allocating funds will support best practices and ensure all students are met. Enrollment is the main driver for our current decision-maker. Unfortunately, we are looking at an ever-moving target that triggers reactions. Leominster Public Schools could not anticipate the natural devastation in the world and its effect on our demographics. Currently, over 200 students, over 200, have moved into our district for numerous reasons since October 1st, and impact not only our class sizes, but our funding sources. We live with an antiquated formula from 1993 that limits our abilities to provide what we all know we need and so desperately to have for each and every one of our students. Careful screening of our enrollment database is paramount to funding. School choice was limited as well this year due to the cuts that had to be made. We're down about 80 students after a large graduating class and closing many of the options to bring students in for FY18. As we carefully track potential moves in enrollment, we look to other revenue sources to build us back to capacity. Special education is currently higher than the state average due to our abilities to keep students in district. Graduation and dropout rates supersedes the state rate, but we need to address a lower inclusion rate. This trend supports the high classroom sizes and need for pull-out services to best support all students. Staff is creatively trying to provide for all stakeholders, but additional staffing is a must. Our financials surface the following concerns. The antiquated Chapter 70 funding does not align with Leominster's demographics and is not in service of our students. As a community, we know we want to promote a contemporary and high-performing school district and seek every opportunity to do so. Keeping the focus on students. Constantly, there are conversations regarding transportation, budgets, net school spending, grants, etc. We need to talk about the success of our students. And balance. Yes, we need physical items in which to teach our students, but that needs to be balanced on a level field where the infrastructure and the platforms are strong enough to sustain function. And lastly, properly trained resources need to be in place to remove barriers so teachers can teach and students can learn. Our community is strong enough, smart enough, and determined enough to create solutions to move Leominster forward. Get there, yeah. As you can see, the organizational charts over the past few years, the educational structure has weakened. I am proposing that we put students in the 21st century, not knowing what their futures will be, and build a framework which addresses the need of every student. Some goals may seem lofty, yet necessary. I propose swiftly aligning roles and responsibilities directly under someone's expertise. A director of strategic initiatives. This person supports drilling down into related sources, funding, and steering in a data-based direction with specific protocols and measurable outcomes. Current curricular responsibilities will be outlined and designated appropriately to support student achievement. The business manager needs to understand and clearly communicate our financial platform without hesitation to the community at large. No confusion in the numbers and level the playing field. All the members of Leominster should be able to confidently discuss funding. C, the administrator of special education must be highly accessible to delineate compliance and articulate the necessity of tiered levels of support for each and every student. And lastly, through an extensive search, an assistant superintendent needs to be placed in the core to provide 100% coverage and communication for Leominster Public Schools. According to our resources, much of our monies, 76% of our budget goes towards staffing. Under this guise, human resources needs to clarify roles, responsibility, tracking systems to adequately staff our buildings and identify needs. Furthermore, Tech Edge has been with us for months. They have evaluated our entire district and have prepared a document for immediate needs versus long-range goals. Included in your packet is the full review of Leominster Public Schools with an abbreviated list for June 2018. 2 imperative job descriptions, an application for grant funding to support infrastructure, which we got, immediate building needs, and a 3-year rotation plan have to be issued immediately. In conclusion, I am hopeful and energized to continue my work here in Leominster. My research tells me assess, review, revise. Assess, review, revise. Communication is the answer to many of our issues. Clarity must be concise and key to enable stability and accountability. And knowing that education is not a solid, we must make the best decisions we can because it's what's best for kids. Thank you.
Any questions at all? Good job. Thank you. Nice. Questions? Cody?
Not so much a question. I just want to say, really well done. This is extremely thorough. I think our priorities are very much aligned, and I really appreciate the emphasis on transparency and communication, especially after the struggles we've had in the last year. And I really hope, that we can work with you to implement this plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Wendy?
I just want to say that I really appreciate the work that you put into this plan, and the bottom line statement, which I've been saying for a while, is that everything we do needs to be in the light of, is this what is in the best interest for our students? So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Ron?
Paul, I really want to thank you for this, because you were right. I waited, you told me to wait, and you're right.
You don't know how much I love hearing that.
Must be the new glasses, Ron.
Well, these are my reading glasses. They're awful.
Are you telling us you haven't read before today?
Oh, no, these are my regular bifocals. But, and I know I look like a...
They make you look smart.
No, I don't know.
Okay, we're going to move back down to 3, the Finance Committee sub-reports, and Kristen is occupied with events tonight. I did want to point out the article I think Holly brought up at the very beginning, city paying 13 janitors no longer working. City paying 13 janitors no longer working. And an article and an editorial that appeared in the Sentinel and Enterprise. And so maybe I don't want to oversimplify it, but let's start at the very beginning, which was a decision was made to privatize custodial services. A company was hired, I think with all the greatest intentions. The company was hired, but didn't have very much time to ramp up, in fairness to them. And so they hired as many people as they could. I think they thought they were going to bring other people from other places, from other contracts. That didn't work out so well. And we received complaints from every school, from teachers and parents, staff, kids, everybody. And at the same time, the union filed an unfair labor practice. We were issued a complaint, went to the Department of Labor. Reading through it, as I've read, I don't know how many dozens of these things, didn't look good. Spoke with our city solicitor, didn't think it looked so well. Simultaneously, there were, I think the school committee asked if I could go around to different schools, look at the complaints, the cleanliness, meet with the building managers, meet with the Durkin Company. I did, and issue a report 2 weeks later, which I did, and my suggestion at the time was the schools were not looking well. I think they were trying very hard, just couldn't do it. And based on that, my own observations and discussions with staff and students and parents, along with the fact that there was a complaint issued by the Department of Labor that we should hire back the custodians. So custodians were hired back. I think that took effect November 14th of this year. 13th or 14th. We hired back as many as were willing to come back to the system, and then that was going to be sort of filled in with the cleaning company, any vacancies that were there. In order, let me just straighten this out now. In order for there to be a contract with the school department, city, and the Durkin company, and I've explained this in the past, doesn't mean that one person could just sign the contract. We have a regular standard process by which we issue contracts. On the city side, and most of the time in the schools, all contracts go to Copeland and Page for review, and have a contract attorney that reviews these, and then any comments that are made are sent back. In order for there to be a legitimate, bona fide contract between the school department and the Durkin company, there would have had to be a vote by the school committee and/or a signature from the purchasing department and the mayor. There is no signatures by the purchasing agent nor myself as the mayor. If there's a if there's a vote by the school committee authorizing the superintendent at the time to sign a contract, then you might have a problem with the Durkin company. And I don't know whether, I don't recall, and we can't locate any motion or second by the school committee authorizing the superintendent. That's the only way that you can have a contract. There are no other ways to have a contract. You can have an agreement. Now remember, how this was done is it was done off of state procurement. But that doesn't eliminate anybody from the legal process that we follow with all contracts, whether it's $200 or whatever it might be. So at most, we have an agreement with them, handshake, agreement, call it what you want, to continue to fill in. Now, my opinion is we can hire any cleaning company to come in and help custodial services. We can buy our cleaning products from anybody else. We could go out to bid for these items if we'd like. But, so that's all up in the air. So I don't know where this comes that we have, where this all comes from. It was not only an article in the newspaper yesterday, but then an editorial. And then, of course, it hits social media, and now we have to deal with all of this misinformation that's incorrect, and then the people get upset, and we wonder why people get upset. They have all the wrong information, and then somebody feeds into it, and this thing just runs away. And like we did with net school spending, we'll spend 2 years talking about the same thing because the information wasn't correctly addressed. So as far as I'm concerned, unless, Chris, you know of a vote by the school committee taken, or and I can tell you because I've checked this at least 4 times, there is no signature page from the purchasing department nor myself saying that. And so there's been no authorization given to anybody to sign any contracts on behalf of the school committee, school department, or the city. So if Mr. Durkin wants to pursue some sort of contract or violation of it, then obviously he's free to do so. So we haven't been paying. There are no people sitting home playing video games or doing whatever they might be doing who are getting paid, who are no longer working here. I checked with payroll, that nobody's issuing any checks. Everything has been prorated. I think, Glenn, that as people left the system in terms of these people that work for the cleaning company, we just prorated the amount. So whatever that is, $14 an hour, whatever the amount is that you write, so you just prorate it. There is no, in other words, I think what's represented is if we hired 75 of these people, and now we don't need 75, we only need 10, we're still paying for 75. So I don't know if you want to shed some light on that or just shake your head and say no, but I don't understand the misinformation. But we're only paying for the services that we're generating. So I hope that clears that up. There is no, unless I wasn't here one night and you authorized the superintendent, then I don't see how there's any contract, and we never signed any contract. Yes.
So I just have a question. If, because we know that there is a piece of paper that was signed by the superintendent, what are the ramifications to the school district on that? And then also in the article and the editorial, it claims that there are addendums going back and forth. So I'm wondering if you can clarify that, please.
We can sign, like we've had month to month, like in other words, we're signing off. Like I wouldn't sign, they had put in for $500,000, some incredible amount. I'm like, no way. But what we did agree to is sort of a handshake agreement was we go month by month, and that's what we've been doing. It's only been a couple of months, but it's been month by month.
But they have a form that actually has Jim's signature on it, so what are the ramifications of that? And is that going to
Chris
cost
could
us
sign a
anything?
document, and unless she's authorized to sign a document, I don't know how anybody can say a
So
document
if they bring
is
us to court, they're just going to say that
I can't tell you what the judge will say, but I can tell you on our, from the city side, and you know, remember, we ran into this situation where work was given to a company to provide work without bids. Well, unless you have a document that says, you know, we went out to bid, and this was the lowest bid for this work, and it's more than 10,000 and 20,000 on the threshold, the law is the law. And so we're not obligated to fulfill anything that anybody signed off. They didn't sign off. They would have to have signed off on your behalf to make it legal.
So I guess my question is, if you know that you or the purchaser has to sign those, and you know that the janitor started, I guess I don't understand what the disconnect is there. Would you have said, why didn't I see a contract?
Yeah, I think the purchasing agent asked those questions. And I think the answer that was given was, well, we did it off the state bid list. But you still are signing a contract, and all contracts need to be signed. So I never signed. I wouldn't sign from the day one because of those reasons. And as a result, we worked with them on a month-to-month basis. And I think in a couple of months we worked in a group, like 2 months, whatever. But I don't feel, the city at least, I don't think the school department is under any obligation for any. Now, if we continue to work with them, it'll be by, you could call it agreement, a handshake, or whatever, to continue on to employ them. That would have to be, I mean, if somebody wants to sign a contract, then the superintendent would have to come back to the school committee and say, you know, I've looked at this, there are 10 cleaning companies out there, and my feeling is, and 5 of them are on the state bid list, and I reviewed them all, and I think we should pick this one and go through the right process. It would have to be a vote of the school committee to authorize her to sign a contract, saying, A, the money is there to pay them, I've done my research, this is the best company, and we would be authorizing her to move forward, signing the contract. And that would be, you know, A, B, C, and D would be a signature from the purchasing agent signing off, saying that all of the check, you know, all of those check marks have been sort of, everything's been checked off the checklist. And that would be the only way. In my dealing in 24 years with contracts, we have a set way of doing business, and that's always the way it's been. We've never run into this problem, ever.
So currently, we have Emerald Green augmenting our custodial staff, since not all of the custodians have opted to return.
19 came back. How many came back? 19. And how many employees from Emerald Green? 10. And we're still purchasing cleaning supplies from another company that's owned by the Durkin companies, which, again, we could change that tomorrow if we decide. And no, and again, Chris, unless you know some vote that has been taken, or the superintendent knows of some vote, we've gone back. We can't find any. And actually, this is a net savings. Even still, when we hired back the custodians, we're still going to have a net savings of, I don't know, $18,000, $20,000 at the end of the year. So there has not been a disconnect as it was reported. We've been working right along with Glenn on this and the school department on trying to continue services with them if we can. But I decided to give it to the city solicitor and ask him his opinion, because they do have people that do contracts. And if we want, we can sign on further with Durkin Company as basically a memorandum of understanding, or a memorandum of agreement by month for the rest of the year. That's not my decision.
When do we decide that?
It'll be up to the superintendent and the business manager to make a recommendation back to. I asked the city solicitor for an opinion on whether or not he thinks that we have a contract with them, because I think Mr. Durkin, I don't want to speak for him, but from what I get from it, keeps saying that, you know, we have this contract and we have to do this and we have to do that. And I'm like, well, I don't know what other cities you've dealt with, but we have a standard way, and it's following the law. We're never in trouble by the Inspector General's office. Nobody ever files a complaint, so we must be doing something right. And in this case, it wasn't right. So how do you make it right? I think we haven't signed anything yet. We got a letter from the city solicitor, and ultimately I think the superintendent should come back to the next meeting to the school committee with a recommendation on how to proceed. In the meantime, I think we offer Durkin and Company the opportunity to stay if they want until we come to a resolution. That's just my recommendation, but that wouldn't be any different than anything else the city's ever done. That's standard operating procedure. So just to say, we are not paying 13 janitors who are no longer working for the city or anybody. And, yeah, and I think that's probably the best way to sort of handle it. And ultimately, if you feel there's somebody else that should come in and do the job, let's get the letter from the city solicitor first and then go from there.
Great. Is there anything else on the finance subcommittee for those?
Anything else on the
that were here?
finance? Okay, if not, we'll move on to approval of the minutes.
Were you going to say anything, Nona, or you're
No,
fine?
just that, the minutes are coming up, and I think that will cover what we discussed at the last finance meeting.
Okay. Approval of the minutes, November 20th, 2017. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from November 20th, 2017.
Second?
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor? Any errors or omissions? If not, all in favor? Those opposed? Thank you. We have approved the minutes, November 13th, Finance Subcommittee minutes,
I'll make a motion.
In December 11th.
and December 11th. We'll do them in block.
To motion to approve the November 13th and the December 11th.
They're not in here.
They're not in here. But
Okay.
They came out in an email.
Okay. So we can do those? No?
I don't think we.
If you didn't vote
Okay,
on, if you
that's
didn't
fine.
vote on it in the subcommittee,
I thought I saw somewhere where, okay.
so it's just November 13th.
So November 13th. Is a motion? Is there a second? Second by Ron. Any questions, comments, errors, omissions? If not, all in favor? Those opposed? Thank you. We'll now move on to the vote on Finance Subcommittee priority list.
Before, do you want to do some of these and then go into executive session?
Yes.
Okay.
Vote on Finance Subcommittee. Glenn, do you still have a list here that, were we supposed to vote on those things, those items tonight? Okay.
You have it.
Yep.
Is it in the packet?
I ended up putting it in this, Sue.
And so does somebody want to comment on it, Superintendent, and kind of, oh, Glenn's here, okay. Thanks, Glenn.
It's right before your organizational chart.
Mhm.
The blue one.
Yep. Oh, and here.
At the last Finance Subcommittee meeting, Chairman Kristen Hewitt requested that I put together a list of all funding items that have been reviewed since August, and just to make clear as to the funding source for items that were not included in the general fund budget. And we went through the roster, and the Finance Committee endorsed the following recommendations. Item A is rehiring 2 technology specialists. That was done just before school began. Cost of $50,000. B, we hired 2 language specialists. It was again, the prorated cost was $37,500 based on when they came on board. We hired a senior custodian for this building, again, prorated cost of $35,000 for the fiscal year. Health insurance for the 5 positions above prorated was $40,000. We hired an interim principal for Samoset on a per diem basis, as well as an assistant principal for Fallbrook on a per diem basis. Based on available funds in those lines, we'll need an additional $60,000 to get through June 30th. And the last item is something that Interim Superintendent Deacon has talked about, is try and designate funding for staff that did not receive any adjustment in their compensation for this year. A number of units did receive a 2% cost of living adjustment, and there are 4 or 5 categories of people that did not receive such an adjustment. So in order to have the opportunity to provide bargaining units with a 2% cost of living adjustment this year, retroactive to July 1st, and to provide individual contracts, namely school administrators, and many of the people in central office who are on individual contracts. In order to provide them with a 2% cost of living adjustment, we would need $270,000. The total of those items is $492,500, which just happens to be the amount that we anticipate saving against what we budgeted this year for unemployment compensation. Recall, we budgeted $1,050,000 based on the number of employees who we had to lay off during the budget process. A number of employees we brought back during the budget crisis. A number of employees left, so we were able to bring even more people back. And with the bringing back of the junior custodial staff, there will be significant savings in unemployment compensation. This was reviewed at the Finance Committee meeting. All told, we budgeted $1,050,000. The total claims for the 100-plus people that file for unemployment was $1.7 million. But based on tracking every weekly claim by every employee through October 28th, it's the last claim process we've had, and anticipating that people who are still collecting in October will continue to collect through the balance of their claim, and keeping $50,000 in the account if any new employees leave and file claims, we anticipate saving $492,500 against that budgeted item. So the Finance Committee has recommended to the full school committee that you formally designate $492,500 from the expense item unemployment compensation to cover those items that I just reviewed with you. I can be open for questions. The second item.
No questions? Go ahead.
The second three items on the list were being requested from another source of funds, and it's the school choice funds. This is revenue derived by the district for students that are non-residents that desire to come to Leominster Public Schools. Similarly, we pay out in the chart that Superintendent Deacon put up earlier. We spend millions of dollars for students to go to charter schools or to choose school choice out to other districts. That trend has turned around rapidly over the past 5 years, where we have fewer students choosing to go out and more students who want to come in. I also mentioned earlier we did not accept kindergarten school choice students this year. Typically that's 70 to 80 students, but we did not take in this year because we put a freeze because of the budget reductions. But ultimately, we do get a significant amount of money from school choice, and we're requesting that you consider designating $872,500, roughly half of what we'll get for school choice this year, for the three items listed here. Again, historically, school choice money was not used to supplement the operating budget. While the intent of school choice revenue is to help subsidize the cost of educating the students from other districts, historically, in Leominster, that money has been used to pay for things like transportation, health insurance, and the like, items which the students from other districts do not benefit from. So the recommendation that was presented to the Finance Committee last week is as follows. Number one, to hire a permanent substitute for CTEI to help address the issue with the electrical classroom. Try and find a retired teacher who's willing to come in on a per diem basis to address the need that's been addressed in previous school committee meetings. Number two, we do have an issue with out-of-district tuitions, again, as presented earlier. We have a few more students who are going out of district than were originally planned. It was originally planned at 78, we're now at 81. Also, the tuition increases by the out-of-district schools we have no control over. So they're not looking at a 1 or 2% increase every year. Some of them are doing 5, 6, 7, 8%. And we don't regulate that, we just have to pay the tuition for the students that are there. But the biggest factor is the circuit breaker revenue that we receive to help support special ed students out of district was budgeted at a significantly lower rate than has been budgeted for in prior years. So we're pretty much lost $160,000 to $200,000 right now of anticipated receipts from the state to help support our out-of-district sped students. That's called circuit breaker. Ideally, at the end of the year, the state will find out that its revenues are better than they projected, and they'll increase the amount we get in circuit breaker, but we will not know that until June. So based on that, we're requesting designation of $360,000 of school choice revenues to help out-of-district students, even though they're not students from out-of-district, That's a revenue source that we've used in the past to address that issue. And lastly, it's to designate funding for instructional positions that are right now desperately needed that we just don't have the funds for. And these are primarily classroom-based instruction, whether it's SPED staffing, looking at roughly the majority of that money will be to supplement our current SPED staffing and address issues that Mr. Pratt and members of the CPAC group have presented to this board over the past few weeks. Based on the needs of the schools, whether it's a ABA paraprofessional, a tutor, classroom teacher, that's something that will be derived by the schools in conjunction with the superintendent and the director of pupil personnel and special education. We're also looking at bringing back additional staffing at the high school, and particularly for the guidance department that was severely reduced during the budget process. Bringing on an at-risk liaison to work at the 2 middle schools, and additional financial support for district-wide athletics. As you recall, this has been an issue ongoing. We raised the athletic fees, and we asked the athletic director to try and work with the booster clubs to raise money to support freshmen and junior varsity clubs that we didn't have sufficient funds during the budget process. So it's bringing back allocate funding for that. Just to let you know that these supplemental funding and positions are being requested in the same vein as the mayor has constantly reminded us. You know, one-time funding, it's not recurring, that this is something that we'll do this year with the understanding that when we have the net school spending calculation for FY19, which is supposed to happen the 3rd week in January, we will know whether or not that funding formula provides a significant increase in our funding level or not. Also, as the superintendent explained, we've made a significant effort to try and maximize the factors in that formula that will serve our benefit. The one area that will have the most benefit to us is the number of students that are considered economically disadvantaged. Again, we review this at the Finance Committee. We get a little over $4,000 in that funding formula for every student that is categorized as economically disadvantaged. But we don't make that determination. That determination is made at the state level. It used to be done at the local level through students eligible for free and reduced lunch. And we're doing our best to make sure that every student that should be categorized as economically disadvantaged is done so. We're hoping we get that number in November. That keeps changing. And the last we heard last week was that we'll have that number when the governor comes out with House Bill 1, the 3rd week in January. So keep our fingers crossed. We are hopeful. We've done everything we can. For instance, we significantly increased the number of students eligible for ELL services. That's $1,700 a student. We've increased that by about $250,000 for next year. Hopefully we'll have a similar but significantly higher number for economically disadvantaged students. So the request before you tonight is for $872,500 to be designated from school choice funds to address items H, I, and J on the list before you. Is that sufficient? So the Finance Committee has endorsed these recommendations. The superintendent will come before this committee before any formal hires are made for the positions, because that's something that you've requested. The question is, do you support the Finance Committee's recommendation to allocate these funds based on a budget transfer from the savings and unemployment compensation? And I just want to make a side note. I remember, Mayor, we met with you during the budget process. Jim Jolliker and I met with you.
I don't remember.
Oh, you do? You'll remember this one. When you told us, you asked me, how much you budgeting for unemployment compensation? I said, well, based on the number of people we're laying off, we're looking at $1,050,000.
Right.
And you said, you're not going to spend $500,000. Right. I think you're over budgeting for that. You're right. We'll save $490,000.
Do I get any points for that? Is there a bonus or?
No, we get to fund these services.
A calculator. Crackers. That's all right. The only thing I want to make sure, because I don't want to slip back into the last 2 years here, and nobody should take this personally, but if we can make it part of the record that, in fact, these funds are available, the superintendent, the business manager are recommending these transfers, as well as the Finance Committee, and that this is not one-time money for fixed costs, correct? And I think that's critical, so that we don't sort of go back on the principles that helped us to get to the frustrating point that we arrived at. So these are transfers that the superintendent and the business manager and the finance committee are recommending. Question or motion?
I have two comments. One is that that I definitely support these recommendations, especially the school choice. I know myself and a lot of people that I talk to who have a lot of confusion about school choice and what we use the money for are wanting to see that go back into the classroom. They don't want to see it being used for things that don't have to do with the classroom. So, so I'm hopeful that everybody can appreciate that. We had long discussions about this. The other thing is that I don't want it to go unnoticed. All of the work that was done from the PIC Center and everybody at central office that did all of that work to find us those students. Because every one of those students is that wasn't counted was money that we didn't get from the state. So all of that hours and hours of work that Gina and her staff and everybody else at the central office that worked on that, we owe them a huge debt of gratitude because I know that that wasn't fun work. But in the end, our students are definitely going to benefit from that. And I just want to say thank you so much.
And note that, and again, as public information, $270,000, as you stated, was going for designated funding for staff that did not receive a COLA increase. That's a cost of living increase in 2018. And again, that was a recommendation at the last school committee meeting, as well as the business manager and the finance committee. Just so we're all on the same page here.
It doesn't mean the bargaining units are going to guarantee to get 2%. That's that you're providing the opportunity for that funding. The money will be put in an undesignated account based on final contract settlements that need to be approved by the school committee.
Right. And I think the problem last time in giving increases was that we wanted to give increases. We supported it. We wanted good teachers. We wanted to pay them well. We just didn't have the money. And you're saying tonight we have the money. I'm okay with that. Okay, so we need a motion.
Cody, and then
This makes me nervous. It really does. How can we spend this kind of money and go into next year knowing that we're not going to be facing the catastrophe that we face this year? Is this a gamble to some extent?
I don't think items A through F are a gamble because that's a budget transfer. We will not be incurring same level of unemployment costs. And designating school choice money for this purpose, that those funds are currently available. They have not been designated for other purposes. Part of the reason those funds are available is because in June, I was targeting funding from school choice to pay an anticipated deficit in FY17 for health insurance expenses. The mayor and the city council came up with the funding retro to prior to June 30th, so that funding is now available for application.
So we originally looked at, I don't know, 800,000? Close to $1 million, we thought.
895 is what we ended up.
So what happened is, if we didn't do that, and it was 895, that was another $895,000 worth of staffing we were going to have to cut. Next year, I assume, I don't want to make any assumptions, but I'm assuming the assumption to be made is that that bill won't be 895. In fact, it was. We
budgeted for it this year.
I thought it would be around 550. They were conservative. I'm okay with that. Theirs was up around 895. We paid that bill, so that didn't have to come from the school budget. And now there's excess in that funding, but that's a one-time appropriation. That's why I asked. That is a one-time. So if that happens again next year, if we run into problems with these next year, there is no one-time money for that.
Right, and that's the source of my concerns.
Well, they're saying that this is one-time money.
Right.
Right here. That's why I wanted to read into the record.
This year, and next year, those positions, if that we still want them, we're going to have to find another check and balance somewhere else in the system to support them.
Budgeted in.
Right. It's got to be budgeted.
Wendy?
Yeah, I want to say that if the Finance Committee is recommending this, I'm very comfortable with seeing school choice money go where it's supposed to go and back in the classrooms, so this looks fine to me.
Are you making a motion?
No, you want to make a motion? You're on the Finance Committee?
I will explain later that I would prefer not to make the motion.
So I'll make a motion to support both the money transfer and the designated funding from the school choice accounts.
I'll second.
Motion is second by Heather? Yes.
Okay, now I will disclose that I have filed a conflict of interest on November 20th, anticipating that we may be voting on hiring a position for the CTE electrical classroom, as my grandson, who lives with me, is a junior in that electrical class, so I feel I must abstain on that vote because of conflict of interest.
I mean, it's offered to everyone, so it wouldn't be a conflict.
It wouldn't be.
You can file a disclosure. It's just letting the public know. That's
But I
fine.
just felt that I should because.
It's not just a teacher for him, it's for
No, it's
anybody
for
in the electrical
everybody in the
field.
program, but it's
he
always
benef-
best to file a
he
disclosure.
benefits from it. I mean, I think I'm glad to see it. I'm glad to see these proposals. I certainly was in favor of all of these, but I just felt I needed to clarify that I felt I might have a conflict of interest.
Can never go wrong by filing a disclosure. But I think you can vote on it.
You think I can?
Yes.
vote? Okay, fine,
And
great.
if I'm
I will.
wrong, then I'm in trouble. All
I
right?
will.
Okay, there was a motion, a second by Heather. Any other questions or comments? If not, all in favor? Those opposed? Okay.
Surplus?
Surplus items. Who's next on our agenda?
So I'd like to make a motion to declare the items listed as surplus.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Nona. Any questions about any of these? Yes.
We had a discussion earlier. Eileen will say it too, because the question about.
Ronnie, I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
You gotta move it closer.
We had a little discussion earlier in policy regarding this particular issue about surplus equipment. Am I right, Eileen?
Yes, but not pertaining to this specific situation.
Right, but the school that everyone's had been part of the discussion for a long time, is it considered equipment or just a school? Because it's just gathering space. The Lincoln?
Right, we're talking about the property.
Right. And, I think it's in the same avenue. It's
Right.
surplus. Should we take a chance and try to sell it, since it's been brought back on our docket all the time?
I don't understand. The items that,
So the policy had said getting rid of property, and so then we had a discussion about whether property, we amended the policy to include property/equipment, because thinking that a copy machine is, or whatever it is, a computer, is property of the school system as opposed to physical land property.
Right.
Was what our discussion was around. So we can't vote on Lincoln because that's not on the agenda or
I know it's
presented
not
to
on
us.
agenda, but it's still part
But
of
we
the,
can vote on these items because we've have always voted on getting rid of surplus equipment that's broken and no longer functional. So that would be something to bring up at a later date
But I guess
about
my
what are we
point is,
doing
the
with
question
the
is,
Lincoln
is the
property.
school considered equipment? It's property.
No, it's.
I know I'm splitting hairs on it.
yeah, there's a big difference between equipment, because, well, the law guides the difference between a building and a computer.
It just keeps on coming back on the docket all the time, and I just figured.
In a month, Ron, I'll give you a full report on the Lincoln School. This will no
Perfect.
longer be an issue, I don't
Excellent.
think. I don't think.
Well, it's just, I'm just asking,
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
No, it was a very good question.
So it's a good question, and so what Dean is saying is that in a month or so, it should be on our agenda, and he will rectify the situation for us.
Because in order for us to do anything with it, you're going to have to declare it surplus. And the city council will have to declare it surplus.
And then it goes back to semantics. This is what we're
No,
talking about.
it doesn't go back to semantics.
That's all.
Okay. All right, motion is second. All in favor? Those opposed? Okay. What are you going to do with them? Sell them on eBay or something, or an auction or something, these items here? They have no worth, huh?
No worth.
None?
None.
To nobody?
Nothing.
Somewhere?
No. A junkyard. Yes. So I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session under Chapter 39 to discuss possible litigation, and we will be returning.
We invite Attorney Angelini into the executive session?
Yes.
Wait, I have a question. What? So we're just moving executive session up, we're still going to do the action
Yes.
items afterwards?
That's correct.
We're not discussing the action items in executive session?
That's what, yes.
Okay.
Attorney Angelini's here.
Yeah.
Be invited in. Okay, this is ENA, starting with Mr. Hool.
And we'll return, right?
Cody? Yes, we will
And we
return.
will return, but everybody needs to.
Yay.
Yay.
Which I recommended, and I believe it would have shown more transparency. However, in an effort for this committee to move forward and to do the work that we've been elected to do, which is to ensure our students receive the best education that we can provide, I will make a motion to rescind my motion.
Okay, is there a second?
I second it.
All in favor? Those opposed? Okay. And the next? Next is,
Cody's thing first.
you want to do yours first, or no?
Go ahead.
I think it would make more sense after.
Go ahead.
So I just want to make a statement that the committee did not intend to break any open meeting laws. Obviously, this has been something discussed a lot the last week. It's been acknowledged in retrospect that the motions should have been put on the agenda that were proposed a couple weeks ago. And the committee agrees to attend open meeting training laws in the future.
The committee as a whole.
The committee as a whole.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
By Nona. All in favor? Those opposed? Next on the item is vote to censure the chair. Heather?
Although I feel like what I did was appropriate, and I certainly hope that a lesson is taken away from this in order to move the school committee forward and refocus on what is important, which is the students. I'm going to withdraw my motion to censure the chair for bullying and intimidation, and hopefully better things will come from this. Thank you.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Opposed? On to new and old business?
No old business? No old business? Yes.
So 2 quick statements. I just wanted to say congratulations to all of the middle school students who worked very hard this past week auditioning, and those who were cast in either roles or in the ensemble for this year's all-city musical, The Sound of Music. And I just wanted to say to Heather tonight on your last meeting, it has been an honor to be your colleague. You will be missed, and thank you for your service to the school.
Thank you.
I was going to also acknowledge Heather, but you beat me to the punch. But I do want to acknowledge Kristen. Although she couldn't be here with us tonight, she's dedicated, I think, at least 12 years to the school committee, has worked tirelessly on behalf of the students, and really was a driving force in having us better understand some of the budgetary sort of constraints and processes. So her invaluable contribution will be missed, and we appreciate all of her hard work and dedication she's shown to the committee and the students of Leominster.
Okay, if there's no other new or old business, we wish everyone a happy...
Heather?
Oh, Heather, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who was so supportive of my term on the school committee, and for those who were so supportive on the school committee, I just want to say thank you. And I'm going to actually steal a line from Ronnie and say, through the good, the bad, and the ugly. Thank you very much for your support. Thank you.
Before the school committee, we wish you all a happy holiday. There's a full day at school.
Happy Hanukkah.
Full day of school. I can see where this is going already.
Motion to adjourn?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.